Welcome everyone to J3 Your Podcast. Your host John Joe. With me is Luke Miller. Today, how to grow your calves.
It's the secret everybody's been waiting for. So get out your notepads and get ready because we're about to give you how we have monster calves.
The secret, it's one of those body parts that it seems different than every body part that people speak on. It's like, well, genetically you just have it or you don't. I remember there's a story with Dorian, and I forget who he was speaking with, but he was asking Dorian, like, I've done everything to bring up my calves. It hasn't worked. Like, what should I do? And Dorian's just like, stop training. It's like not the answer you would expect, right? He's like, yeah, just you're wasting your time. Just if they're not growing, you've done everything. Just put more time into like body parts that'll actually improve. So you hear all kinds of things like,
oh goodness,
about him. So yeah, we'll dive into like how we would approach calf training, and maybe there's probably some myths we can knock out.
Probably a good place to start is like the two main variations you have, seated versus straight leg variations.
How about this? What about the division need? Do you think there's a place where, like, because some people ask that, maybe that's a debunked myth, but maybe it should be first for like assessing, do you need calves? How heavily are they even judged, I guess?
I think it adds a lot to physique, and just hear me out. I think when you have a good set of calves, especially from the rear and from the side, the visuals of making the knee joint look smaller can actually make the sweep off the quad and a little bit off the hamstring from the side look a little bit more dramatic. From the side, especially if you fill that gap between the hamstring and the calf, I think there's shots where it can add to the visual a lot. Is it extremely aggressively judged like the other body parts? I have a hard time saying that, probably.
Yeah, you've seen like there's top Olympia guys with no calves, and I don't think it's going to be weighed as heavily. It's the guy with the fewest weaknesses, right? And the higher up you go, it gets more in the minutia of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you should, if you can make them complete, why would you not? I've heard some like men's physique guys weigh in that they're like heavily judged because you kind of have like in the middle is like this board short, and then it's like back to symmetrical skin with the calf. And could it weigh in more of that division? I don't know. I think it's just still when you're judging someone and you're looking at like that silhouette, like what grabs your eye, and if it's just another body part that can help do that, it's one you should want to focus on.
Yeah, sure.
For female divisions, I feel like it goes the same, because especially if you're a division, like for one, you're bodybuilding or WPD, where you're basically your height, so that weighs in the same. Where it kind of changes is like, what about bikini figure wellness? And I think you just need the development level that looks within proportion to the muscular polarity of hams, glutes, quads that you're bringing to stage. You're never really seeing someone like, oh man, they're super calf dominant, they should scale that back. It doesn't really happen. So I think having them match the rest of the physique is important, and you kind of have an advantage if you are in heels because you are shorting the calf. It's going to be more flex the entire time. I think regardless, like having proportion within all divisions across the board is what you want for your entire physique.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of brings us to talking about the decision making of possibly exercise selection, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
So I categorize them into two. In fact, I give my clients a good bit of leniency with choosing what they do for these. It's just a straight-legged variation and a bent-legged variation. Obviously, the differential here being gastroc involvement, because we know the gastrocnemius crosses the knee joint, so theoretically should be more involved with straight-legged variations rather than bent knee variations, with soleus kind of being involved in both, but potentially a little bit more in the bent knee I think variety is probably a good place to start with calf training.
Yeah. I would argue you don't need a lot of variety.
That's what I'm saying. Like saying, do you
Yeah.
need variety? Like,
Yeah.
is variety necessary, right? Like, can you stick to the same 2 exercises? And because you see people like doing calves every day, and it's like a different calf movement
Sure. Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
Because yeah, and then kind of walk through where we put it.
So yeah. So and this goes across, I think, for any muscle group, where you have a muscle that crosses, even if it's a joint, and you have one insertion and one origin point.
Yeah.
Hitting the angles won't matter, um, especially for a joint that has limitations to its planes of movement. So basically, the calf, you can just dorsiflex and planar flex the elbow. You're moving in one pattern. You don't have all this side to side movement like a shoulder joint, right? It has all types of different planes that it can move through. The ankle joint, yes, it's pretty mobile joint, but as far as least how the gastroc acts on it, it's relatively through one plane of motion. So you could make some argument for like some like moving the toes in, toes out. It's going to put emphasis on the inner and outer gastroc. But let's be real. If you need calves, and we probably all do, just train the whole damn thing. Like get in the best position that you can to output with the calf, because you get in these like really suboptimal positions with like toes way kicked in, and you just limit the amount of tension you're going to be able to put into your gastroc, and then it's suboptimal. Or you're starting to bind joints funny, and now you're having other issues to occur. So no, I don't think variety. I think use the best machine apparatus that you have to do just that dorsiflexion flexion for the gastroc, and you could ride with that one. I will say that I have variety in my calf training from a logistic perspective, and so this is what I do is on my day that if you have 2 leg days, the day I squat, I do a Smith squat, and I just throw in like this little calf block we have, and I'll just jump right into my calf after I squat. The day I do leg press, I just do calf raises on the leg press because it's already loaded. Maybe that's just a lazy perspective, but either way, it works. Like I'm just there to do it. Not that there's something special about rotating my my exercise variation there, but it's just a convenient aspect.
I guess that answers my question, because I kind of lean towards doing calves on days that aren't legs.
Yeah.
From a quality perspective, like I'll start push or pull with calf work as long as there's not hamstring work associated in pull.
No, that's a great point. Like where are you placing it? I think it also comes down to what you need.
Right? Yeah, that's fair.
If this is like a high priority item, whatever that muscle group is, you're going to want to train first.
Right.
And also in a day that's not going to influence your other movements. So like Luke has brought up in the past of training calves and fatiguing them before moving into a squat pattern that requires a lot of ankle stability. You could be, for one, it's a safety issue, really. You could be less stable, but also being less stable, you could output less. So that's a consideration, because a lot of programming is hitting calves first before you move on to all your leg movements. And maybe if you are doing more machine-based leg work, like hack squats, leg press, it's not as high of a requirement, but nonetheless, it's a consideration to make. And then putting them on an upper day would make a lot of sense, especially if it's a push day and you're not carrying weights all around the gym and stuff like that, or squatting, obviously. That could be a good spot for it. My calves are not super high priority, so it does come at the I'll throw them at the end of the leg sessions. What I had been doing that. Now that changed since I changed my split up, because I like at least hitting them twice a week. Legs is once a week right now, so that changed for me personally. But I think that's a great consideration.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the biggest issues I run into is calf fatigue ruining my compound work, whether that be squatting or leg press, or even had it where if they're sore enough, it affects hinging. And so like for me, it's like the duration away from leg training is an important aspect to consider. So I'm always doing them at least 2 days, 2 days removed from whatever my lower day is going to be.
I guess this, if you have someone that's really needs to bring them up, I mean, I would think you probably train them every other day.
Yeah. Or the way I'll do it is like the 2 days removed and the leg day will have calf work. So it ends up being like 4 per rotation.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, if you are training that frequently, you might have some day that falls into a leg day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then what, I guess, what is the lesser evil? Like doing calves, I guess just put them at the end of your leg day versus doing them the day before.
Which could affect then the leg session.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's valuable. And I think kind of to bring it back to your point, which is probably the most valuable here, is what is the priority to you in development, right? And then placing that according to where you need. I think you could also consider like choosing the straight leg variation for output could be consideration depending on how much actual loading you have going on in your program. Like for me, I have a fair bit right now, so it really helps me to do my straight legged variations and hip loaded straight legged variations. So donkey calf raises or leg presses or stuff like that, where it's not really actually loading me quite as much.
Yeah, I will say, like, the day that I squat and I do my calves on there, like, it worked for me because squat is my only like big, large leg movement of the day. I have a leg curl, a squat, then I did calves. so I'm not going through like for Luke, like you squat, you have leg press, then sometimes you had like even a single leg pattern, right? And then you go to calves and you're going to do them like axial loaded. And you know, if you've done calves like this and you're like hips are shaking all around, and you know, it's just it's sketchy. So yeah, it would be better to like just drop into like a donkey calf raise. You don't have a donkey calf raise, a leg press works as well to do toe press.
Yeah, and I think go ahead. What you got?
Yeah, I was going to bring up like completely locking the knee versus having like a soft knee in there. And I cue, keep a soft knee, a slight in, because locking the knee, you actually lose quite a bit of leverage of the calf to work on the femur. And so I would, but if you keep bending it too much, and it's also bending as you go down, then you're going to bring in a little soleus, which is not the worst thing ever, but also it tends to people start driving with the quad and start like kind of doing like some weird calf squats. so lock in that soft knee, so you still have like good leverage for the gastroc to work on.
Yeah.
I think execution is also important to address because people like to get partials with calves and also bouncy with calves.
Yeah, and potentially cueing as a lead point here. So like just understanding the ankle joint, like when we're operating in that straighter plane, keeping it where you're cueing foot pressure kind of in that big toe down position, it's probably going to allow you to have the most amount of ankle joint before you even get into how we're executing these in ranges.
Yeah, you'll see people that are loading too much, and you'll see, if you look from the back, their heels are like kicking out to the sides versus keeping them right over the toes, driving straight up, or if you cue like push the heel through, versus
ankle forward,
push the weight up. I think that's a better cue to use, and within that useful range of motion on calves, you should be doing it within your active range. But also they have a great like stretch reflex component. So control the eccentric down and doing a slight pause even in the bottom can help remove some of that potential energy in the elastic part of the calf, make it more challenging and get better actual contractile tension with calf. For at least
do you think the pause and the contraction point's necessary?
Probably not completely necessary. It would actually, for I think if you're someone that where you're coming from a point where you're like really bouncing calves and you need the learning point of like in controlling that joint too, because I think if you're moving too fast, you see that's when you see someone having a lot of some knee flexion and using that. So I think if it's scaling back to lock the pattern in, sure, but then from there you could argue, just control the movement.
Yeah, I was gonna say using it as a learning tool to progress from there, kind of like pause squatting, right? You use pause squatting to learn position, and then you progress from pause squatting to actual squatting.
So that's the straight leg
Bent leg
component. So bent leg would be next, and I would say if you're hitting calves, you want to be hitting all these actions up across the week for every day when you're training calves. So a bent leg, which we pretty much have nearly only one option, really. Unless you're
calf raise.
unless you're like MacGyver. I see guys doing something with like a Smith machine across the lap, because they just don't have a seated calf raise. That's all it is.
Right. Yeah. Probably the most valuable point here is because the cueing at the foot's going to be the same.
It is.
Is stacking the knee over the ankle and not having it like way over the ankle joint or even way behind the ankle joint. More so for that force transfer going through the knee into the ankle joint or the foot.
Yeah, no, you're right. If you get the knee too far forward, like the pad is too far up on the thigh, and you'll also like really reach a point of lengthening the calf quick and not being able to fully shorten it that way. So you want it pretty much to where the knee joint is directly over the ankle joint. Yeah. To be in a position just to have the full range of motion. Good tip. Maybe don't keep your hands on the top of the handles.
Yeah.
Like you're on the roller coaster.
And
you just like good bicep pump today. Yeah. So sometimes I like my hands in front of me, but just like on the sides of the pads, just so I'm not grabbing them. Some people like touch their calves to like feel the muscle or whatever you want to do. Just don't cheat. Let the calves do the work. I don't really have much to add on the seated calf raise.
I don't think I do either. I think it's just I do appreciate on the calf the spot ability of it is nice. If you have a partner, like he can really just take it to I can't move my ankle joint point and go from there. But outside of that,
and the soleus one is like visually it's seen, and if you want the biggest calf possible, train all the muscle groups that are around the calf. I think that might bring us to the front of the calf.
Yeah, anterior tib.
You rolled your eyes. You're about to like just discard that one.
Just fuck it. Don't trade it. The bane of my existence.
It's like, I'll train triceps, but I'm not going to train biceps.
No, it's just I don't have a lot of ankle mobility, and so like my anterior tib raise looks a little bit like this.
Do you have a tib raise at the gym?
No, we do, yeah, but me originally saying no tells you how much I use it.
Gotcha. I think the first one I ever saw was John Meadows talking about it because I watched his calf training. He had some monster calves, and he's like train the entire muscle group. Like I want the biggest like taping circumference measure I can make. So train the anterior tib, and it's also just from a balance perspective. I think even like you bring it up even from like shin splints. If you're doing like this much like incline walking treadmill, especially as bodybuilders, not training your anterior tib, it could probably aid in that.
Yeah, for sure.
But same thing goes, just getting in a position where you can use a full range of motion. I still cue like driving through the big toe to flex the anterior tib. It's a tough one. Like if you don't have an anterior tib raise, there's not like an awesome version to really do with it. But we can have some options. Like I've taken a box, a jump box, like plyo box. We'll call it jump box. Like one that you can put your knee up on, hook a band loop around the base of it, and then you could stretch it up and put that over the top of the toes and you do your tib raises that way. I've seen some goofy ones about loading the like standing calf raise, and then you just stand on your heels with your toes off it, right? And you do tib raises this way. I'm like, this isn't loading
the tib.
Like, I get, yes, you are doing, plantar dorsiflexion, but you're not, and the heel has to like push down. But it's a shitty way to do it. Don't even do it that way. It's a waste of time.
No. I'd rather you put a plate on your toe than do that shit.
Yes. Yes. do the band or order a tib raise. Like I ordered one, it was $100 actually, and got it into the gym because I was on a streak of like, I really want enormous calves. So train both. You want the biggest calves possible, train your anterior tib. And that's 3 movements you could do depending on what you need volume wise. I would say at least 2 times a week. You could argue like every other day, but I would definitely like give them at least a rest day.
Yeah, from a recovery standpoint and for your foot's sake, because dealing with something like plantar fasciitis can be fairly detrimental across multiple patterns.
Yeah, don't try to bring up calves when you're in prep and you're doing all this treadmill walking. It's not the time to bring up anything. It's time to just maintain. So scaling back your actual resistance training for calves would be ideal during that time.
Yep.
Bring them up in the off season. Other things around calf training that you got?
I think that's it. I think that's all I got.
One thing I would say is around the like, every muscle group's going to have the genetic component around it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So some people say, oh, you either have the genetics for it or you don't. That goes for every single body part across the board. And it's just training the piss out of it as hard as you can and make it what it is. It's like, do you have the genetics for potential for big calves? Like, I don't know, just go find out and just keep working on it. It's a small muscle group. So it's going to be one that's just very slow to progress on. You have to be consistent.
Yeah.
Just like anything. I've heard other people say like, well, you walk around in your calves all day. So they do have a slight training component to them already. So you might not see as a fast of growth as when you start training some other muscle groups. I can maybe get on board with that slightly.
Yeah, for sure.
I looked at the analogy of like that mechanic that's like wrenching all day and has like pretty jacked forearms. Most of us don't wrench all day on cars. So like if you start training, like you might see some more dramatic growth versus like the mechanic that's been working all day on cars. Is like, yeah, like my work capacity is sky high. Same with someone that's probably walking around. Another interesting one that I heard is fat man calf.
Yes. Oh my God, that's a great one.
So, and I heard this from Dante Trudell a long time ago, and in kind of his protocol that he was doing calves. But yeah, he's like, if anyone you've seen that's ever been like really, really obese, overweight, they all have like crazy big calves because they just walk around with like a huge load all day long. And yes, you have to have bigger calves to carry a bigger load all around. So I think he was doing like some really crazy high incline treadmill walking. And you can do them like loaded, right? And
eccentrically load that dorsiflex position.
Sure. So like, is that why you need the dirty bulk to get big calves in the off season? Don't just listen.
Please don't.
You can't justify your pizza burgers every week.
Calves aren't worth it
for the calves.
About to walk into destination, see KFC buckets lying around for this episode.
So yeah, still the basis of muscle building is the same across all muscle groups. Don't really change. So it's how much per set volume do you need? And I think rep ranges within calves, it's relatively the same across other muscle groups. Like we're still talking, your primary work is in that 6 to 15 rep range. I know some people have talked about, well, soleus is a little bit more slow twitch, and you could argue doing higher rep ranges. I think that's getting a little nuanced. I think with big picture, if you're working in the 6, let's call it even 20 rep range, and you need to take them pretty close proximity to failure, if you're doing that, that is the big ticket items of what needs to be done. And then also just all the execution stuff that Luke and I have addressed. Do those, train them hard in this hypertrophy rep range, and you're pretty much covered there.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that wraps up calves. Yeah.
I think it does. Best of luck, everyone, on your massive calf gains. That's what all I want. Like, being an old man is wear shorts and be like, have big calves,
Big
and
arms, calves.
big arms, and big calves. So what else do you want as an old man? So train them now, guys, because that way it sticks around when you're older, and you can still look like you used to weight train. Go, remember that? I was as big as you when I was younger. Yeah, buddy, you were at the Olympia too. Cool. my mom, she told, she was like in cheer squad or something. She always tells a story like, yeah, the instructor would come by and she'd slap me on the butt because I wouldn't tuck my hips under, because back then it's like, you didn't want some big bubbly butt. She's like, yeah, when I was your age, I had glutes like you, Renee. I was like, really, Mom? You didn't weight train at all, and you had Olympia level glutes. Like, what a diss, right? Like, to her, it's just like building herself up, it's all good. But the thing about it is like, yeah, you just totally diss Renee. Like, yeah, I had your glutes. I didn't even train.
Try.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh goodness.
Well, everybody, thank you all for tuning in, and appreciate you, and we will talk to you next time.